Hey, what's up? Chicago and I back again, and we're here to talk about some more stuff for Intel Bytes. Now, in light of the recent FBI takedown of QuackBot, which was pretty awesome, I decided to go ahead and cover something that was a common technique for QuackBot, and it was called HTML Smuggling. Now, this is not to be confused with HTTP request smuggling, which is something different, but this is more. This is its own entity, as it were. And it involves HTML and JavaScript as well. Now on my GitHub page that I'll link here in the video, I have a write-up of what I'm talking about today, including some code that I'm using and any references to whatever sites that I was actually pulling some of this stuff from, like Hacking Articles and just the regular JavaScript pages and things like that. And so all that's going to be included there in the write-up so that you can follow along with this as well. And we're going to use two different boxes today. We're going to do the first test, show you how it works and what it looks like on a Kali Linux box, which I know doesn't have any of the antivirus or anything like that. And then we're going to do one on Windows 10 VM, which will have just the basic free Defender that comes with it, and we'll see how it fares. All right, let's get crackling here. And we're going to swing on over here to our VM for Kali here. So on my webpage here, which is github.com/shikaraganai, you're going to see a write-ups section. Again, I'll put this link in the video. And we're going to talk about this thing called HTML Smuggling. Now, it's not really anything too new, but there are some recent activity that we've seen from some threat actors that are utilizing this particular technique. And QuackBot was one of the major ones that was actually using this, and they recently got, well, the majority of it got shut down from the FBI, which is pretty awesome. So what the heck is this HTML smuggling thing here? Well, I wrote it up here as an evasive payload delivery method that helps an attacker smuggle payloads past content filters and firewalls by hiding malicious payloads inside of some seemingly benign HTML files. What's all that garbage mean, Ray? Well, essentially, think of it like this. If I were a threat actor and I wanted to send an executable, let's use DNSCat2.exe as an example. Now, I know for a fact that Windows Defender, don't like it, considers it malicious, as do a lot of other different antivirus vendors. So they consider that to be a malicious tool used for DNS tunneling purposes. So let's just take that as an example, or Netcat or what have you. If I were to send that executable through an email to a victim, it's highly likely that the email security that's in play with a lot of organizations like O365 in a lot of enterprises, different things like that, it will likely catch this and not allow it through. And it may just block based on it being an executable. So, that probably won't get from the outside in through the firewall to the victim for them to, be fooled into running it. So how can we smuggle this in? Well, a lot of the actual email filters may not be able to determine what is malicious HTML or JavaScript. So if I actually had an attachment of HTML instead and send that to the victim, if the victim were to open up that HTML file locally on their machine, then the JavaScript, in this case using what's called a JavaScript blob, actually constructs the executable directly right there from the browser. That basically means that it's running behind the firewall, if you will, and I've smuggled it past the firewall onto the victim's machine, unknown to the victim, of course. And that's essentially what the concept of HTML smuggling is. Now, there's different ways you can approach it, and one is just using the basic HTML5 stuff, which in this case here has like a download attribute. So you can also try to fool them doing that way. But we're going to talk about both ways today. We're going to talk about the HTML5, but also the JavaScript blob. So what the heck is a JavaScript blob? So if you were to go ahead and just kind of Google that, and it takes you probably to W3 Schools or something like that. Yeah, right there, or W3 Docs. So this JavaScript blob is supported in modern web browsers. It can be used for a variety of purposes, one being file handling. So they can be used to read, write, and manipulate files, data manipulation, working with binary data, and asynchronous processing. They can be used in combination with web workers. So in this case here, you can see the syntax for constructing a blob is it's going to be new. And this, by the way, is with JavaScript. So if you're not familiar with JavaScript, JavaScript is kind of the dynamic element, or it's the element you add to HTML files to make HTML pages dynamic, as essentially. So in this case here, new blob, and then the actual parameters that are needed here are the blob parts and the options, but then you also have this type here, which has a MIME type in this case here. And if you ever see this let, this is another way to say var. So back in the day, it used to be just var for variables, but they wanted a little bit better control, granular control over the variables. So in this case, let is what they were using for that. So if you see let instead of var, that's what it's a variable. So in this case here, the blob right here where it says blob parts, that's going to take an array. And we're going to see that in use a little bit later on when I talk a little bit more about it. So as an example of what we're trying to do here with this JavaScript blob, we want to go ahead and actually have the file here, and it's going to be a base 64 encoded value that can be read in with these browsers. They don't really have a problem with this. And then it will construct the executable from there. So it's going to be pretty awesome. So here's an example that I put up here. And so here you can see, here's a regular basic HTML portion here. The P over here would be the paragraph, ID main. These are just pointing to different pieces of something called the document object model, or DOM, on a web page. And this script right here is the indicator that says the next portion is JavaScript. So here you can see var, or let, whatever one you want to use, called ABC. So the variable ABC is going to hold this blob called new blob, and the actual blob part, or array of string of characters in this case, is going to be just a string of characters. What's up, player? And then the MIME type is going to be text plain for that. Now, the other way you can actually think about this is if you were to go ahead and do data. I'm trying to remember now how to do this. I probably should have remembered how to do this earlier. Actually, I think I have a write-up of it. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. So data, was it colon? I'm trying to remember now. Colon text slash HTML, comma, H1, what's up, Leia, and then one. I think this is correct. So what you can see here is something called the data URI, and this is what is being used a lot with these sort of things, these sort of HTML smuggling stuff. What you're looking at here is when it says data colon, then after it comes whatever the MIME type is. Essentially, you can craft an entire web page just in the URL. You don't have to host it on a web server. You don't have to do any of that stuff. It's pretty crazy, and it's a real good way to fool people using some fake login pages, things like that. But you can see you can actually put a full entire web page within the URL itself, and then tiny URL it to make it not as obvious that it's something crazy. But that's kind of the concept of what is going on with this whole MIME type stuff and adding this stuff in here. It's kind of that similar concept to that. So in this case here, we have the text plain, the var def. This right here is the variable called def, and it's going to be implemented in a new file reader. So if you look here under the Mozilla documentation here, file reader object lets web applications asynchronously, which means both at the same time, read the contents of files or raw data buffers stored in the user's computer. Now we need this because it needs that array as part of that blob or whatever they're talking about for that. So then after that, we see a variable assigned in the file reader. It is using the file reader component of the add event listener. Let's go back up here. So def is now file reader. So basically file reader dot add event listener. So if you look here, let me increase the page size here. So if you look here, you'll see it eventually in here somewhere. Add event listener somewhere in here. And this one here, load end, is going to be talked about as well. Let me bring that up as well. Here, there we go. Let's see, right here. And this add event listener sets up a function that will be called whenever the specified event is delivered to the target. It has the syntax of add event listener, which is the type, and then the listener that they're going to be listening to. And so in our code, the type is actual file reader's load end event, which is the one I just brought up here. So this load end event is fired whenever a file read is completed, successful or not. And you can see the syntax of it listed right here. And let me go back here. And then let's see, where is that here? Document.get element by ID. And this is basically saying where in the actual page we want to have this. And this is pointing to this document object model. And actually, this is probably a little bit more convoluted than we need, but I'll break it down a little bit better with a different example when we do the blob. Let me open this one here. Yeah, this is a little bit easier probably to wrap around. We don't need all that extra stuff. So in this case, let's do this one here. So blob download test right here. The download attribute causes the browser to download instead of navigating. Download leroy.txt. Let's see, new blob right here. So this right here is me creating it with text plain as the MIME type. And so this is creating the blob essentially, and then making it called leroy.txt, which is right here. That's what it's going to download as, or I can name it anything I want in this case here, but that's what it's going to be in this case. So if we were to go ahead and try to run this particular page here, let's take a look and see what it looks like here. So this will probably be a little bit easier to understand seeing it visually. So this page comes up here and it has a download link. So if I were to go ahead and click and download this, that blob is going to be created, and it's going to be created in the format or the MIME type of text plain. And you can see right there, there's the value if I open it up. Leroy Jenkins, right? So that's kind of what's going on in the blob thing, which is a little bit easier probably to digest than the original example I gave. But you can see right there is where I'm actually given the values of what I want the actual text plain to be, and then I had chosen to call it this. So basically you can change and modify this to whatever you want. So if I wanted to call it leroyjenkins.txt, save it, come back, and then reload this page and download, you'll now see it's called leroyjenkins.txt. Okay, so that's the value, that's the variable portion that you would actually modify for that. So that's kind of the basics of what a blob will do just for the text file side of it. And then there's also this HTML5 download attribute as well, which is also pretty interesting here, where you can actually go ahead and just have the person try to download it using ahref, and then right here in HTML5 we have an attribute called download, and it's actually going to go ahead and download whatever the file is in this particular case here. Now in this one here, I just made this basic page just to kind of demonstrate that it's going to download this particular malicious file that I pulled from the Red Canary Atomic Red Team test, whatever, pages. And this one here basically means that whenever you click on login here, it's actually going ahead and downloading the attributes. So that's another way you may see some smuggling happen, but the majority of what you're going to see, like with Quackbot and some of these other ones, is going to be the one I just mentioned here, and we're going to do it with base 64 in this particular case. So as an example, what we're going to do is on my page, my Chicago Night GitHub, I have this Leroy3.exe, which is a renamed DNSCat2 executable. One of the versions, I can't remember which version it is, but I just renamed it just, you know, in case any filters are just looking by name or whatever. And the goal is to download this and then convert it into base 64 and then make it as a blob and have this be assembled on the person's machine behind the firewall. That's the goal of what we're trying to do here. Now, if we were to try to do regular base 64 of it, like if we were to come here and do a base 64 and do that of the file, there's going to be a little issue with that when it comes to adding that as a JavaScript blob because of the carriage returns and the enters and the spaces and stuff. So it's better to have it all as one single line. And an easy way to do that, I found, is by going to a site called Base64 Guru, and I'll have this in the actual write-up as well. But if you go to Base64 Guru, what's pretty awesome here is that you can go ahead and convert a file to Base64 and have it be just plain string text, one line, right? No carriage returns, none of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and browse over to my Leroy3.exe, open that up, and then I'm going to encode it to Base64. Okay. Next, I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and we're going to put it into a template file. But before I do that, let me come back over here. So the template file we're going to be using is one I pulled from Hacking Articles, and I put the link, I believe, in here. If not, I'll put it in. But it was a really easy script, template that I could use to demonstrate this. In this case here, we're using a function B64 to array, because as you recall, the JavaScript blob format needs to have the arrays. It's looking for the arrays. So in this particular case here, that's what this function is doing. But the only piece that you really need to worry about is this right here, where it says value. This is where you're going to stuff in between the single quotes the actual Base64 that you have, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop open this. Oops, I'm sorry. No. This one. Close that out. I'm going to make a new text document. And I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this template here into here. And I just, obviously you want to make it a lot more convincing than, hey, malware detected, alert, run the download. Oh, by the way, what this script will do is it will simulate a click. So actually when the person opens the web page, it will automatically start the download because it's simulating that you've clicked something. So pretty cool there. Anyways, so yeah, this is not going to be super sneaky or anything, but it's just for demonstration purposes. So right here in this value section, in between the single quotes, that is where I want to go ahead and grab my Base64 encoded file, copy all of that. Go ahead and pop that bad boy right there. All right. Swing this over. That's a massive line right there. All right, so now we have this all set. Let's go ahead and save as, and we'll just do it as, my Leroy.html. Let's go ahead and put it in my folder here. Save. Boom. All right, so now let's go back over here and let's open up this page. We'll say File, Open File, and we can see my Leroy HTML. I'm going to open. And then immediately you can see that it actually downloaded. Oh, by the way, this payload.exe, let me go back to the script here. It's similar to the one I was talking about before when I renamed what the file will be when it comes to the machine. That is right here. So you can name this anything you want. You can say TPS reports. .exe, whatever you want to call it, you can put anything you want in there. But that's where you actually put whatever the file name is for it. So this now downloaded as payload.exe. Now let's just verify using strings program that this is actually indeed the DNSCat executable, that it didn't modify it or change it or anything like that. So let's go ahead and run strings on it. So we'll say strings payload. Really? Is it not there? Where did I download that to? Oh, to my downloads. Okay. Let's go ahead and cut that. Pop that bad boy. Just to make sure we're all keeping everything in housekeeping. Paste it there. Awesome. All right, so let's just run strings on this bad boy and verify that it is indeed the DNS cat. So we should see things like the help file for DNS cat, I think. Let's see here. Okay, let me go down a little further. There it is. All right, so right here we can see, yep. So there's the help file for DNS cat. So we can tell that this executable is indeed the DNS cat 2 one that you can run. As a matter of fact, we can probably just go ahead and say payload actually, we're going to make that .sh. We'll do it on the Windows machine if it allows us. But we can see that that's actually the DNS cat 2. So it actually constructed the whole executable right from the HTML file, which is pretty interesting. Now, on Kali, there's nothing going to flag that as being malicious, so no big deal there. Let's test and see how this works on Windows. Let's come over here to my Windows machine, and let's verify that we have our Defender on. Using real-time protection here. Let's check. Okay, so we got virus threat protection all turned on, ready to go. So let's go ahead and try this. Bring up my browser, and let's go ahead and come back over here for a second. Let us copy and paste this. We'll copy that. And let's go ahead and paste that bad boy in here. All right, let's save it. Save as. I'll just do it in my documents, no big deal there. So we're going to do ahead and do all files. I'm going to call this myleroy.html. And we'll click save. All right, so we now saved. Oh, look at that. As soon as I saved it, something came up. Let's take a look here and see what we got going on here. Threat found. Is that today? Yep. Take a look, see what it found. Trojan. wakatak.html. So, yep, look at that. There it is. Leroy Jenkins, myleroy.html. So it actually had a problem with this bad boy right off the bat, it looks like. And it flagged it. So, excellent. Let's go back and verify. Documents, myleroy. Let's see if it did anything with it. Well, look at that. So, take a look at this. So here's the script that's not, or here's the portion of the HTML file that's not malicious, but right there, there's a script all the way to the script. So they removed all the offending code automatically. How crazy is that? So Microsoft Defender is doing some sort of analysis of the actual text within the document itself. So I don't even have a chance to run this to see if it would actually assemble it. So we can be assured that this, well, let's say, actually, let's do this. Let's verify that it's doing it based on it being malicious content. So let's take our benign blob file, which was the text document one, and verify that it's not doing it just based on it being a JavaScript blob. So let's see here. All right, so this one here is just the blob. Yeah, so that one shouldn't be considered malicious because there's nothing really malicious there. But it is using that blob technique, so let's just verify that. Let's see, we'll come back here, do Notepad, paste that bad boy in, and we'll call this here myleroy2.html. Make sure it's under all files, save. And it doesn't look like they're having an issue with it. Nothing's popping up, so let's go ahead and try to open. I don't think they're going to have an issue with this one. Then download. Leroy Jenkins. Nope, no problem. So it is determining based off of what they believe to be a malicious file, right? So as an example, let's try one more, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. Let's go ahead and try to let's do netcat. So let's see here, because I'm pretty sure every antivirus out there is going to go ahead and flag this bad boy here. Actually, I'll just do it right from that. Was it USR share Windows resources? So let's try that. Let's do browse to file. Share Windows binaries, right? And there it is, netcat. All right, let's go ahead and encode this bad boy. Excellent. All right, so let's go ahead now and go back to this one here. And let us so it is doing it in sections. I don't know what that's all about. Let me maybe do this. Just to be quicker about it. All right. And let's go ahead and copy over that netcat value. Copy. And let's put it right here in the variable. Ooh, that's a big one. Save as my net. I'll just say my net.html. We will save it as all files. Click save. Boom, look at that. Popped immediately for it. Let's see what we got. Protection history. And it looks like hack tool. So it determined it as a hack tool, which I would assume remote administration means that they believe it to be netcat, more than likely. All right, let's go take a look at the actual document, see if it did it like the last one. Let's open this with our notepad, and yep. So it removed all the offending code in between the script tags. That is a really cool way to do it. Now, I can tell you for a fact, I've tested this on some other EDRs and AVs, and there's some of them out there that do not do this, and they're not proactive, they're more reactive, and highly likely it would run and, you know, then get caught. But there are some EDRs that I've also tested this with where it does not catch it, because there are some EDRs out there that are signature-based AVs. That's all I basically call them, because that's all they're really doing. And so I'm assuming that using this blob technique that it's going to make a new hash, and that's not in their database of hashes for netcat, and it was able to run with no issue. But if I were to download the actual nc.exe directly, then that particular EDR had a problem with it and deleted it. So it's obvious they're doing some sort of hash matching with that. So I would test this against your own EDR and your own AVs at your enterprise to verify whether or not this would actually get through. Now, I also tested it through email from outside email in the HTML file, the malicious one that had the netcat and the DNSCat. And I will say that O365 security that we have on email did catch this and flag it and quarantined it. So make sure you try to send it through email with whatever email solution that you use verify that the security tool and on that actual email tool is catching that and saying, hey, this is some malicious content in here. It's amazing that, you know, the O365 one does that, but I think it's maybe because of the O365 Defender, because we already saw how Defender works with it here. So my guess is Defender is working kind of in the same way for O365 there as well, which is pretty awesome. I like it. So big props to Microsoft on that one there. But anyways, that is a technique called HTML Smuggling. I hope you guys enjoyed that there. And I'm going to try to do some more videos coming up here. I know I've had a short lull of videos I haven't done in a while. But I'm going to start trying to do some more videos here in the near future. But check out my YouTube channel. I got all kinds of different videos that you can check for all kinds of different things. I've got a pop another server drop series, which goes over some CTFs and explains different hacking techniques based on running CTFs, using CTFs as a learning tool. And then I have this Intel Bytes channel, which is more of the threat intel, red team, purple team type of discussions. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And until next time, don't forget to check out the website at chicagoguy.com as well, and then the GitHub page that I'm going to put in the links here. All right, until next time. Peace out, players.